Chris at A to B here. You caught me while I was starting to put this together. I've actually got most of the bottom end together. Sorry, I just got started on it and realized I wasn't really filming any of it. Most anybody that knows me knows I'd rather be building engines, so instead of doing full car service. But anyway, I've got 7 of the 8 rod and piston assemblies in. The ring gaps all came out good, so let's try to get this last. We got to get number 8 in there. So anyway, take you over here and show you what we're doing. So we got our piston and rod assembly. I've already installed the rings on the pistons. So we want to make sure that our rings are split side to side. So our number 2 ring, sorry, it's hard to get this whole piston in the screen. We're running a 4.33 inch bore. So the second ring gap is right there. My top ring gap is right there. And then it'd be real hard to see, but my oil ring gaps, if I can find them here, my oil ring gaps are right here, right in this area. The bottom one's right there, the other one's right there. So what I am going to do, it's hard to do one-handed, I'm going to turn the oil control ring pack until that lower gap is right there. The upper gap is over here about a third the way around. So then we are going to turn the number 2 ring around. Once again, doing this one-handed is not simple. There we go. We'll get the number 2 gap worked around until it is right about there in relation to the piston pin, and then we will turn the top ring around. Once again, one-handed is not easy. There we go. So that way our number 1, our top ring, number 1 ring, is in relation to the wrist pin too, about the same area. So what we will do now, we will take this, dip it upside down and put it in a bucket of oil and just let the rings and pistons soak up oil while I will get our last connecting rod bearing set out. We will go ahead and put that bearing shell in there. Once again, they did a very good job resizing these rods. If you remember, number 7 and number 8 were our worst ones. And just to show you the right side of the cap, this is our original number 8. They were able to save it, and also number 7 was saved. So I am going to go ahead and put this other bearing shell in the top of the rod. And these are the same as the main bearings. You just want to make sure that they're evened up with the edges. I think that's good. We will wipe that out just to make sure we didn't get any dirt particles in there. We'll do the other one the same way. Put a little bit of pre-lube on there, a little bit of pre-lube on there. Same thing on this side. Then what we will do is, you can buy fancy tools for this, or you can just use, in this case, 3/8 fuel line. Put it over the bolts on the rod. That'll keep our crank from getting nicked. While that's soaking, we will come over here. We want to make sure that our number 8 crank throw. The crank throw for number 8 is at bottom dead center. Looks like we're pretty close. While the block is upside down, you want to wipe this cylinder out one more time. You want to do this while it's upside down because you don't want, if there happens to be anything in the cylinder, which there shouldn't, I've already wiped this block down several times. You don't want to do it with the cylinder facing up because you don't want to drop that in on our fresh crank journal. So that's that. So let me get you on a stand and I will flip the block up. All right, now we'll flip the block up. Put the deck as close to 90 degrees as we can. Get a little bit of oil from our soak bucket here that we're soaking the piston rings in, and we will oil this cylinder wall down. Plenty of oil. I'll bring you around here real quick so you can see what I'm doing. We are going to put the piston ring compressor on here. Once again, you want to just double check, make sure your gaps are where you want them. Crank that down tight. I will move y'all back over here and we'll see if I can get this in one shot. So like I said, we are running a 4.33 inch bore, and that's the 500 Cadillac's 4.3 inch stock, and then it's bored 30 over. So I'm getting to the end. I'm out to the very end of what my piston ring compressor can compress diameter wise. So it's been a little bit of a struggle with a few of them. So let me go grab the piston and rod. Hopefully this doesn't make me look like an idiot on camera. I finally figured out the trick to making this work. We'll see if it stays working. So you start that down in there, see how those hoses, the way they're curled, it keeps the rod from touching the cylinder wall. You gotta be careful to get the piston started straight, because the bottom of a piston is wider or larger diameter than the top. The pistons, all pistons are tapered in at the top because the top gets hotter, and as the engine warms up when it's running, everything comes straight. But when everything's cold, the piston skirt is at the diameter, pretty much at the diameter it's always going to be, but the top is not. So we're going to set this, tap the edges of the compressor down against the block and hold the compressor down, and then gently but firmly put the piston in the bore. And it worked. I kept my trick working to keep it going. So you got to do it quick but firm. You don't want to beat it because you can break the rings. But so then we just go ahead and tap the piston all the way down to the bottom of the bore, so it, making sure, holding on to our hose down here to make sure that the rod lines up. Now we will go ahead and flip the block back over. And I have already checked all the bearing clearances for the rods off camera. I did that when I had the trouble with this rear main bearing. I did actually rough assemble this engine with all the pistons and rods, but no piston rings, so I could plastic gauge all the rod bearings to make sure I wasn't having any other trouble anywhere else, and everything else was good. Grab the rod cap, put it on, lining up my number 8s, so I know I'm in the same spot as it was from the factory, and that the caps were machined to when the rods were resized. Hands on. They did a really good job of sizing these rods, plus these ARP hardware, the rod bolts and nuts, are a very snug fit in the rod cap. So they kind of got to be cranked down evenly and slowly. You don't want to bind them. There we go. So we'll kind of sneak up on the torque here. Just like head bolts or anything else, don't want to run them down real fast or torque one too much. There, that one's tight. 50, 50. While I'm here, I'll go ahead and check these. So we did upgrade the ARP rod bolts. So the factory torque spec on the rod bolts was 40 foot-pounds. The ARP head rod bolts are, the spec from ARP is 50, so we're going to use ARP spec. So after we got that tight, then we turn the engine over just to make sure it turns. And you do want to turn it over after every one put in. That's what I've done the whole time. And that's the last one, and we're still turning smooth. So now we're ready to move on to some bigger and better things with it. Let me go grab some parts. All right, we are going to start installing the timing chain set. We are using a Cloy's Performance. See if I can get it to focus. Street True set. It's a roller set. While I'm generally not a giant fan of Cloy's standard replacement parts for just your everyday driver, their performance stuff still seems to be the same quality. This set is actually stamped made in the United States, so these Cadillacs use a giant chunky chain. So this set's capable of stock, 4 degrees advance, and 4 degrees retard. We're just going to install this cam straight up, so we are going to use, according to their directions, we need to use this round keyway. So we just start it over the crank snout and over the key. It's kind of a mild press fit. It's not a heavy press fit. So I usually just walk these back with a small hammer and a brass punch. There we are. put my turning bolt back in the end of the crank. Now the directions say to use the round timing mark. So, let's see if I can get it where you can see here. We want to bring this mark right here till it is straight down. Straight down. Then we will go over here and get our cam gear. Now these Cadillacs don't use a dowel pin. They have a blind hole, so they have a bolt hole here, a bolt hole over here, and they have a blind hole. The blind hole has to line up with the hole in the gear, but there is no dowel pin. So, once we do that, we will bring that around until those two line up like that. Now we know we've got it set where we can put the chain on. Let's see if you can see me put the chain on. Now what I'm going to do, I usually just put these chains on dry. Make sure our holes still line up. We got our marks lined. Now, line our crank camshaft. That comp cams, that cam gear is a snug fit on that comp cam. So, I'm gonna have to tap it down here a little bit. There we go. These chain sets usually start out pretty tight, but then once they've run a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on these bolts just because I feel better about that. Let's pause for just a minute. Okay, we got it sorted out. That's a very snug fit. That bolt hole is very precise. I couldn't find a torque for these, but these are only 5/16 bolts, So, and they're Loctited, so we are going to torque them to 18 foot-pounds. 18 to 20 foot-pounds is usually good for a 5/16 bolt. While we are in this neighborhood, we are going to go ahead and put the fuel pump eccentric on. This is what mounts to the end of the camshaft and runs offset to run the fuel pump arm. So make sure the bolt fits the cam. Same situation, I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on this. It just makes me feel better. Now this is a 3/8 shank bolt, so couldn't find a torque for this either, so I'm going to torque this to 35. That's a good rule of thumb for a bolt that size. So now we will turn it back over, make sure everything turns together before we lube it. Should make 2 revolutions with the crankshaft, and it should come back around to lining up. Yeah, we did something wrong. We're a little bit off there. Well, I'm gonna have to back up and regroup on this. All right, that's why I show you stuff in real time. Anybody can make mistakes, so. Anyway, now I got that line back up again. I must have got it off when I was tapping that on. So we'll turn it around again and make sure that it lines up. That's why we always double check everything. That way there's no surprises when it comes time to turn the key on this thing. And right there we are, straight back up. Now that we know that our timing's right, we can go ahead and put some of our pre-lube in the chain and gears, and we'll crank it around. Call that installation done. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the oil pump pickup on. Once again, we got new O-ring on here. Get this thing to focus on that. Put that new O-ring on there. One thing I did find that was kind of odd, yeah, there we go. It's kind of hard to see. I don't know if I can get the camera to focus on it or not. Right there where that little copper colored spot was like a piece of the factory. It's like where it's factory soldered together, and there was a big blob right there that was sticking up, and the O-ring wouldn't lay flat. So I filed it down to where it's smooth and flat with the surface. I wonder if this thing could have had a factory defect and was sucking air. I wonder if it was sucking air right in this area and having oil pressure issues. Though once again, no torque specs, so these are, the bolts down here are 5/16 and the one up here is 3/8 shanks, so I'm just going to Loctite them and use a industry standard torque spec for bolts this size. We'll do 18 on the pickup, on the 5/16 and 3/8 on the, and 35 foot-pounds on the support bolt. This bolt's not tight in the threads. I just can't get a socket on it straight. So that is, now that the pickup's on there, we need to go ahead and spin it through again just to make sure nothing hits the pickup tube. Everything looks all right. I think that's about all I got time for. Next time we'll work on getting the oil pump put together, because this has the external oil pump that right here. So I've got a rebuild kit for the oil pump. The housing wasn't in too bad a shape, but the gears were all nicked up. So I would much rather have had a whole new oil pump, but unfortunately all that stuff's back ordered, so we're having to rebuild the one we got. So anyway, till next time, like and subscribe. Sorry, I keep getting my hand, I'm left-handed, so I keep getting my hand in the way. Everybody else can do this easier. So anyway, like and subscribe, and hit notification bells. Thanks.